Thank you everyone for joining us for the November 18th Planning Committee. Um, as anybody who was just hearing, the meeting is being live streamed so members of the public can observe and they're able to submit comments. Lori worked through the technical difficulties and looks like we're running just fine on that. Um, we are conducting this meeting remotely and in the spirit of New York State Open Meetings Law. Um, we are recording the meeting. The meeting is being held remotely in light of the resurgence in COVID community spread and to just ensure everyone's safety. Minutes of the meeting will be prepared and posted at a later date. There was a recent change, I think a week or so ago, to the open meetings law about posted minutes within 2 weeks. But since we have a full video recording, we do not need to post those minutes. The video recording satisfies the requirement. We will have two separate agenda items or two separate opportunities on the agenda for the public to interact with the committee and provide input. And to that end, on the public input platform, there's multiple opportunities for the public to provide some input. Alex, if you can advance the slide. So we have a dedicated email address, GTC Planning Committee at publicinput.com. Folks can text W4527 to the toll-free number that they're using to connect. If they're connected on the either on the phone or on a device, they can leave a comment via chat, via email, via text. They can hit *2 and leave a recorded comment that will be shared with the committee, or *3 to be put in the speaker queue, and at the appropriate time we'll be able to have an audio bridge for them to speak to the committee. And with that, here is the agenda for today, and I'll turn it over to Scott.
Hey, thank you, Jim. Good morning, everyone. I'll call a meeting to order for November 18th, 2021. And Alex, I think if you could go through the roll call, we'll kick it off that way.
Sure, Scott. Tim Hens, Genesee County. Angela Ellis, Livingston County. George Hebert,
sewer line or the sewer district 1 or 2.
the legislature.
I'm sorry, was it?
Folks, if you're not actively speaking, can you mute your line? We're catching some background in people's offices. Thank you.
All right, Ontario County.
Tim McElligott present for Ontario County.
John Papinetti, Orleans County.
Here.
Mitch Rose, Seneca County.
For districts 1 or 2.
Present.
Kevin Rooney, Wayne County.
I'm here.
Devin Blue, Wyoming County.
I'm here.
Greg Pryor, Yates County.
Monroe County is also present.
See Tim
Cutler is here for Yates County.
Thanks, Tim. Monroe County Executive, Todd Fries.
Team Director, yes.
Monroe County Planning Board, Rochelle Bell.
Here.
Monroe County Supervisors Association, Robert Kiley. Monroe County at Large 1, Scott.
I'm here.
Monroe County at Large 2, David Lindsay.
I'm here.
For the City of Rochester Mayor's Office, Norm Jones. Rochester City Council. City of Rochester Planning Commission, Kevin Kelly.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Murphy. I'm here in place of Kevin today.
Thanks. City of Rochester at Large, Eric Frisch. Empire State Development Corporation, Stephen Golding. New York State Department of Transportation, Chris Reeve.
Bill Kleinberg representing.
New York State Thruway Authority.
Hi, I'm Tahir Manyama, representing Sean Carrington.
Thank you. Genesee Finger Lakes Regional Planning Council, Paul Gavin.
Paul Gavin's here. Good morning.
Rochester Genesee Regional Transportation Authority, Bill Carpenter.
Carpenter here.
Federal Aviation Administration, Evelyn Martinez. Federal Highway Administration, Maria Chow. Federal Transit Administration, Uzoma Anukwe. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is today's roll call.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Next on the agenda is the public forum. Is there anyone watching from the public link that would like to address the committee before our proceedings today?
No, Scott, I don't see anybody wishing to do so at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lori. Or was it Jody? Either way, both of them. Thank you. Thank you. Next up would be approval of the minutes of the October 14th, 2021 Planning Committee meeting. Would entertain a motion to approve.
Kleinberg, so moved.
Thank you, Joel. And a second?
Second.
Michelle?
Michelle, okay, thank you. Is there any comments, revisions, or any edits that anyone feels should be made to these minutes? Hearing none, we'll signify approval of these minutes by a consensus. If there's, I'll only ask if there's anyone who does not agree. Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved. Thank you. Brings us up to announcements and old business.
Okay, I do have one announcement before the old business, as alluded to in the roll call. Devin Blue has been appointed to the planning committee as a member representing Wyoming County, and James Bragg has been appointed as his alternate. Both gentlemen are relatively new in their positions as the county highway superintendent and county planner, respectively.
Okay.
And then with regard to the discussion of forming an active transportation advisory group, you may recall that October 14th meeting, we discussed the establishment of this group. As I had mentioned at that time, I raised the formation of this group with the GTC board on August 26th. They were supportive of the idea, but wanted the planning committee to agree on the parameters. Last month, staff provided a draft term sheet that was prepared to give you as a committee something to react to. There was some discussion, some initial reaction, sought some clarifications, and then agreed to take the time between the October meeting and today to sort of digest and consider that term sheet. The meeting package that was sent out did include some modifications reflecting the discussion at the last meeting. Really, the biggest changes revolved around the UPWP and TIP applications, making it clear that the intention was that the advisory group might be the source of some ideas for potential projects, but not evaluating those projects. We have committees already in place that have that responsibility. But before moving this proposal forward, wanted to open it up to any other discussion, any other concerns.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Are there any comments, concerns everyone have regarding the advancement of the Active Transportation Advisory Group? Okay, I think sounds good.
Were we able to satisfy people's concerns? I know, like I said, we made that little adjustment on the TIP and the UPWP. Hadn't really heard any comment last month about the other stuff. Just want to be sure that we're good to go. Okay.
Okay, I believe so. Sounds like there's consensus on that.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Jim. And welcome aboard to our newest members. All right, next on the agenda is action items. We have up the first Unified Planning Work Program project. as we started last month, we were going to try to divide these up to split the workload on the meetings. But in the case of projects that we can advance, we will take them as they come. So this is an example of that. This would be approving as report of evidence completion, the Monroe County Traffic Signal Sign Pole Assessment Management Project. And we have Jonathan Walzak from Barton and LaJudas going to walk us through it today. Also with us is Tom Pollock and the project manager, Dave Kubiak, to be able to address any questions folks might have. So, Jonathan, you ready?
I am. Thank you, Scott. So just brief overview of the project. The purpose of the project was to create a countywide inventory in GIS format for all sign poles, traffic signal poles, and associated traffic signal equipment maintained by the county. Field data was collected at 669 locations throughout Monroe County. The data collection began December of 2020 as weather permitted and continued through July of 2021 and was completed with BNL teaming with Lou Engineers, divvying up the locations accordingly. The project deliverables include a working geodatabase incorporating all GIS inventory data, condition assessments, and photos, as well as a summary assessment report. Just a quick few notes on the data collection. BNL developed a project-specific data collection form using ArcGIS Survey 123 that was installed on smartphones. The app was paired with a Bluetooth receiver to obtain horizontal accuracy and obtained data for the specific features of the project, the traffic signal poles, pedestrian signal poles, the traffic signal control cabinets, pole boxes, and sign poles. And just a couple of quick notes there: 2,000 traffic signal poles, 900 pedestrian signal poles, and 650 control cabinets, and 5,000 pole boxes. The data was added to a GIS database in real time, allowing all the stakeholders to track progress and allow for a concurrent quality control review. And then another component of the project was condition assessment. Condition assessment followed New York State DOT signal pole inspection guidelines, provided a visual assessment, ratings of 1 being good to 4 being critical, and 5 unknown for various components of the traffic signal poles themselves. Those listed there: foundation, anchor bolts, base plates, post column supports, post to arm connection, and span wire or arm members. And the condition assessments were incorporated into the database and summarized in the summary report. And we have completed the data collection and GIS database at this time. So.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jonathan. Any questions of Jonathan? Dave and Tom, anything else you'd like to offer on that, or?
Nothing
really. I'm just going to say we'll use this report. We'll certainly go through the critical findings first, but this report will be very useful for future programming of capital projects and possibly a specific traffic signal project for any upgrades or repairs that are needed.
And I'd like to ask just a quick, is there any surprises found about conditions? I mean, were there any things, any locations or equipment that you found to be worse shape than you thought or better than you thought? Study give an overall assessment. Or
I would say that the system as a whole is actually in better condition than I would have thought for how old a lot of these signals are and for how many we have. There actually were fewer critical rated locations than I thought there would be.
Yeah, that's good news. All right, good. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, we'd like to approve this and recommend this to the board. Could I have a motion to approve?
I'll move it, Angela.
Oh, thank you, Angela. A second?
Yes, exactly.
Bill Carpenter.
Funny.
Thank you, Bill.
But
Okay.
nice to meet everybody.
Again, assuming there's a consensus to move it forward, is there anyone opposed? Okay, we'll move this on to the board for approval at the board meeting next month. Thank you, everyone. All right, next up, our transportation improvement program actions. We have 3 that are all for planning committee approval. And what we've done in the past, we'll just hear a brief overview of these and approve them in a block if that's acceptable to everyone. First up would be increasing the total cost of the Tallyard Road over Flint Creek Bridge replacement project.
Good morning. This is Tim McElligott from Ontario County. This TIP amendment is broken into 2 parts. The first part is related to the right-of-way acquisition phase for the project. We underestimated the value that's currently within the TIP and did not account for the soft costs associated with the right-of-way consultant to actually negotiate and close on the property acquisitions. We need an additional $4,500 for that activity, $3,600 fed. The second part of the amendment is related to construction bidding phase. We have completed ADPs at this point, and what our consultant has found is that we need to incorporate about 300 feet of additional road reconstruction to allow for the hydraulic capacity required or recommended as part of the Highway Design Manual, Bridge Manual. This additional road work will require about $260,000 of additional funding necessary to make the project whole, which comes to about $208,000 federal.
Okay. Thanks, Tim. Any questions, Tim, on that? All right. Next up would be the increase in the total cost of the Route 204 Brooks Avenue, Route 33A to Rochester City Line project. New York State DOT.
Okay, this is Joel T. Yep, thanks, Scott. So for those familiar with the road, just to the west of the airport is a railroad bridge. And in order to have adequate clearance under that bridge, the road dips down. And of course, as a result, that's a location where water pools. So DOT had to install years ago a drainage system that includes pumps and things that are not our norm. We typically rely on gravity. This drainage system has become a maintenance problem for us. It is extremely expensive for us to maintain year after year. And so we are requesting additional funds to engage consultant services because, again, this is not our area of expertise, to try to explore options and see how we can handle the drainage in that area better. The issue is, again, the drain is in the road, and so all the road grit ends up in the pump, which then clogs. So we're trying to see how we can move the drain or really move the pump out of the road or see if gravity can be used. So we're seeking additional funds to get some help to explore that.
Okay, thanks, Joel. Any questions of Joel on that? Joel, you might be up again. Next project is the increasing the total cost of the Route 414 over CSX Bridge Rehab project.
Indeed, and this is another consultant need. State DOT is not accustomed to hiring consultants for engineering. Typically, we do everything in-house, as our staff changes and largely retires, and also as our program has grown, we've increased the need to engage consultant services. And again, these excess funds were not originally programmed when the project was intended to be designed in-house. But as we engage consultant services, we're looking for some extra funding to hire consultants. Again, this is PE, so project is just kicking off.
All right. Thanks, Joel. Any questions of Joel on that project? All right. As we mentioned earlier, and what you'll see on the screen now is the revised target offsets based on these changes to the different funding sources. And if there's any questions on that, I'd like a motion to approve these three items in a block.
I'll move it, Angela.
Thank you,
Second.
Angela. And Eric, second, thank you. Okay, assuming there's no opposition, is there anyone opposed? Oh, great, these are passed, and we'll get these moved forward right as quickly as we can. Thank you. Brings us up to the next group, next one. This is a TIP amendment requiring GTC board approval. That is adding the federal fiscal year 2022 railway highway crossings, section 130 projects. Joel, is that you again?
I believe so. Hopefully you guys don't get sick of my voice. So this is an annual action. State DOT, Albany has a rail bureau. Region 4 DOTs involved, and of course all of our local railroads are involved in this annual effort. This uses a kind of a set-aside pot of money. It's HSIP, so safety funds, to address rail crossings, and we refer to these typically as lights and gates, right? These are either replacing, installing, or upgrading the safety appurtenances at rail grade crossings. So they're relatively small dollar. You can see we've got a decent number of them in the region, and this is, again, just very typical. We do this year after year. So these are non-planning target funds. These are managed out of Albany, and it's primarily just for informational purposes that federal aid is going to be spent in our region. So these are typically consultant designed, and then the railroads implement, and then state DOT reimburses for the work. The railroad typically does the work, and then we reimburse, again, using the specialized subset of HSIP funding.
All right, great. Thank you, Joel. Any questions of Joel on that?
Scott, I just wanted to point out something a little bit different on this. We presented to the TDC and they were supportive because these projects are specific to the rail crossings, come from a dedicated fund source, and sometimes run into changes, snags with the schedule. We'll get communications from main office, hey, this project's changing the schedule or the dollar amount's changing a little bit, but it's not going to affect any other project. We wanted to take the same approach that we did with the last round of Bridge New York projects, so that should main office identify changes to any one of these locations, we as a staff can make the modification as a staff modification and not have to wait to come back to the planning committee or the board if the timing isn't good. This allows the changes to be expedited, and again, it wouldn't affect any other project in our region. So we're putting that out there to gain concurrence as part of the recommendation to the board that be allowed.
Right.
Scott, this is Tom. I just have a quick question. Joel, you mentioned this is for gates and lights. Wouldn't that be infrastructure owned by the railroad?
It would. So railroads are interesting in that, you know, rail crossings are not about their safety. It's about cars. We often say like cars are king, but in this case, actually rail is king. The railroads really have no need to upgrade the crossings because it's, you know, cars not going to really hurt their train very much. It's about passenger car safety, and that's why we make transportation funds available as opposed to rail. You know, the railroads aren't investing their own money, is I guess what I'm trying to say. This pot of money is specifically there to protect vehicular traffic primarily, and again, that's not typically in the railroads. It's not high on their agenda.
Yeah, we've worked with them myself. I completely understand. In addition, I guess a follow-up question, would you also be working on the approaches? Or is it just the
I understand that I understand it's possible. I would need to triple check that, but I think it's very rare. Typically, these are just, you know, replacing the bulbs and or upgrading them, making sure the gates are in working order. It's not typically sort of pavement work.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and Tom, if you look at the cost of the individual locations, it's relatively small. There are times where a grade crossing is upgraded, where you can think of like on West Ridge Road in near Dewey Avenue, the railroad crossing has like those rubber mats close to the rail to make it a little bit smoother for cars. I think it depends if you're in the inside lanes or the outside lanes. But the approaches, unless there's a site issue concern or really rough pavement, it becomes a highway safety project as opposed to a rail crossing. This is really the federal recognition that the crossings themselves are somewhat unique and you know, are prevalent across the country. So that's why this section 130 is specific to that.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. We haven't had a motion or second yet, right? Yeah, can I have a motion to approve?
Just to be clear, these are approval of the administrative modifications that are planning committee actions, and then the rail crossings. Oh, I'm sorry. I did we have the resolution and vote on the administrative modifications, or did I mess up?
Yeah. Yep. No, yeah. No, that's fine. Yeah, we did the
Okay.
we did the planning committee first. Now we're doing the board recommendation.
I apologize. Yep, this would be the recommendation.
Okay, so if I can get a motion to approve.
This is Kevin Rooney. I'll move.
Thank you, Kevin. A second?
Yeah, I'll second. Tom Fries.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, I will move this a consensus unless there's anyone opposed. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. These will be recommended to the board at the next month's meeting. Next up is the long-range transportation plan. There's nothing to report on that at this time. So then moves to the next item, 5D, related activities. And that would be a recommendation to the board affirming the 2022 Genesee Transportation Council host agency agreement between New York State DOT and GTCS Incorporated. Jim, help us understand all that.
All right. So, as noted in the cover memo for this item, the federal metropolitan planning funds that cover GTC activities, they're provided on a reimbursement basis. And in order for this to occur, we need a host agency that provides working capital and administrative support. In our region, that host agency has long been GTCS Inc. GTCS Inc. is a subsidiary of Rgrta, and it functions as the corporate entity on behalf of the council. Technically speaking, employees are employees of GTCS Inc. because the council is not a legal, an entity that could take on legal obligations. It's a collection of elected and appointed officials. But being a subsidiary of Rgrta, GTCS Inc., their commissioners or directors are essentially the same as, well, not essentially, they are the same as the Rgrta Board of Commissioners. The New York State requires that a host agency agreement is set to formalize that relationship between New York State, GTCS, and on to the benefit of GTC. And this host agency arrangement is the same for all MPOs in New York State. Some are hosted by counties, some hosted by, well, at least New York City is hosted by the state. Some are hosted by regional planning agencies. Some are transit agencies. So it really runs the gamut. But in all cases, they have a formal relationship. In 2011, the New York State Office of Comptroller sought to standardize the terms and timing of all these host agency agreements across the state. And as a follow-up to that, all of the MPO host agencies entered into a 10-year agreement to get on the same cycle commencing April 1, 2012. So the current agreement for us and all others expires March 31st, 2022. But in order to keep functioning, a new agreement needs to be in place for the start of the fiscal year on April 1. GTCS has served the region well as a host agency and is willing to continue that relationship. GTC and Rgrta staffs, the legal staff, have worked with NYSDOT main office to develop the new host agency agreement. Quite honestly, it was presented here. Do you have any issues or concerns, and make modifications because it's the same agreement across the state. The new agreement will run from April 1st, 2022 through March 31, 2032. And New York State has requested that we get these agreements submitted to them by signed agreements submitted by January 1st to allow time for review and approval by the Office of State Comptroller and the Attorney General. So all signatures can be in place by March 31st. The agreement is very much consistent with the existing agreement and has been reviewed by legal staffs within the relevant state agencies. So there's no reason to think that the Comptroller or Attorney General's office will not approve these agreements. This, the host agency agreement will be on the agenda for consideration by the GTCS board on December 2nd. Technically speaking, the GTC board is not a signatory to the agreement, but it does have a vested interest in the agreement. So consistent with past practice, we've prepared a resolution that affirms the host agency agreement and basically, just provides support that yes, as a council, we still want to maintain the host agency relationship that we have through Rgrta and has served us well for decades. With that, hopefully I've made it a little more clear as to why we're doing this, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Well, you answered one of my questions. I was going to ask if there are any major changes from the previous agreement. You said there's nothing material, so this is my one item.
It's essentially dates and addresses.
Any other questions or comments from anyone else? Okay. You cleared it up for us perfectly, Jim. Thank you.
Thanks.
So if I could have a motion to recommend this to the board.
Bill Carpenter, so moved.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone willing to second?
Joel Kleinberg, second.
Thank you, Joel. Okay. Again, assuming there's no opposition to this, we'll move it forward. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We'll pass that to the board at the next meeting next month. Okay, brings us to our next series of items, reports. Status of UPWP projects. And this normally leads us off, GTC.
All right. So, sorry, just let me get my screens here. With regard to strategic planning, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was signed into law on November 15th, or this past Monday. Staff is staying informed of the forthcoming rulemaking related to new and existing programs, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. With regard to long range plan, staff has focused on other things, primarily the UPWP, so there's no new activity to report in the past month. Same with regard to the scenario tool. The staff responsible for that is focused on TIP. The I-490 Integrated Corridor Management Plan was presented for closeout at the last meeting and recommended for approval for the board to consider on December 9th. The Regional Traffic Operations Center, you may recall that Joe Bavenzi presented a scope of work at the October 14th meeting, and that was approved. So now we'll move forward with the RFP process and procuring a consultant to work on that. The travel time data collection, we haven't had any major incidents in the last month, so we're just nothing new to report on that. Route 96 over Route 14 strategic divestment. Draft RFP was shared with NISOT Region 4 in late October, and they provided some various comments, and GTC staff is working to incorporate or address those comments and revise the RFP. Expect to release it not long after Thanksgiving. It doesn't make a lot of sense to release it between now and Thanksgiving. The Finger Lakes Regional Performance Measuring and Monitoring System. This is the project working with the RTOC and developing new tools to help with automated reporting and potentially dashboard type items for the public. No special activity report. It's the programmers are continuing to work on that on a steady basis. The Cross Asset Highway and Bridge Evaluation Tool. A revised scope of work was presented at the October 14th meeting and approved. So staff will be able to make more progress on this after the TIP project solicitation is released fairly soon. With that, answer any questions on GTC tasks.
Questions for Jim? All right, thanks, Jim. That brings us up to the Genesee Finger Lakes Regional Planning Council.
And I just want to point out that as people are making their updates, Alex will endeavor to drop in some comments. So if there's anything shows up on the screen that he captures wrong, please catch us before we move too far away.
Fair enough. Okay, Genesee Finger Lakes. Anyone? Are we muted?
Paul was on before, and we might have lost him. Joe Bavenzi, are you on with us today?
Hey, Jim. Hey, Jim. Yeah, I'm here.
Are you able to fill in any of the blanks on complete streets or where we stand with lead electrification?
Yeah, just briefly under 5361 complete streets, we're working with the Village of Perry to revise and update the draft complete streets policy that the GFL staff developed. And so I expect to be doing some sort of public outreach to the community later this year or early next year. Under 8552, the Regional Fleet Electrification Study, I have also been working with Jenny Lewinstein at GFL to revise and update the draft report. So we're probably about 2/3 of the way through the draft document there. That's all I have.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. All right, so with that, I think we'll move on to, let's see, I think Livingston County's all set. That brings up to Monroe County. Monroe County Land Use Monitoring. think you might be muted, Rochelle. Check your mute.
I'm kind of new to this Zoom thing. Sorry, everybody. We will begin the working on the report after the first of the year when everybody's compiled their 2021 projects.
Okay. Thank you. Monroe County High Accident Location Program. Tom Pollock, can you say this? We had a nice presentation at last meeting, but
Yes. Yep. Thanks, Scott. So since last month's presentation, we've completed one more study. So we have 7 complete. It's a little misleading the way it's worded on there because it's a 2021 list, but we didn't start till about halfway through the year, so it won't be done by the end of the year. But we have 6 in progress right now that we're working on. And I looked back in the past calendar year between November 2020 and November 2021. We've completed about 16 studies. And just notable in my presentation last month, I mentioned that we had a recommendation to convert Dunn Street in the city of Rochester to one-way westbound from Hudson Avenue to Roser Street, and that just happened this week. So it was approved by TCB and City Council, and we just put that into action this week.
good to hear. All right. Thanks, Tom. And traffic signal pole asset land we heard from earlier. And Monroe County Comprehensive Active Transportation Plan. Hey, Rochelle, you can enlighten us on that. Oh.
You are muted still. Yeah, you're the last quick. You turned off your camera and then turned it back on.
There you go. Now she's with us.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We have 4 proposals that we are reviewing. It's very exciting. They're all great. So next meeting, I will have some information about who we selected.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Rochelle. Any questions on any of the Monroe County projects? All right, on to New York State DOT.
Hi. So again, the RTOC 5903 was presented and waiting for board acceptance. 7952 is the ramp reconfiguration study. The steering committee for that study met on November 4th, and they were presented with a draft report. I understand revisions are being made, and we expect a next draft of the report somewhere in mid-December, followed by a yet to be scheduled steering committee meeting about a month later, so mid to late January of 22. I guess we will then be moving towards final recommendations. Anything to add, Joe? Did I get it right?
Yeah, that sounds good, Joel. But I did want to clarify, I think the description for 5903, and I apologize, that's actually the description for 5902. For 5903, like Jim said, we got the scope approved at our last planning committee meeting. I have drafted the RFP, and I'm working with state and county staff at the RTOC to revise and update that RFP. I expect the RFP will go out in mid-December with a due date in late January. So sorry about that, Joel. I should have updated that earlier.
Thanks, I apologize. Joe. That was my mistake. I copied the wrong status into this this project.
Okay. No problem, Jim. All right. Any questions of the state DOT? All right. Brings us up to Ontario County. I think the 332 study was last meeting. Ontario County Freight Rail Corridor Development Plan.
I don't expect Tim would have that. Jody, are you online? Are you able to give an update?
Yes, this is Jody. As it stands right now, I believe county planning is still working on the scope. Last I heard, so I'm expecting we should get it at the beginning of the year.
And that would be the scope of work for planning committee consideration. They had some staff changes and some other projects, so it fell behind their intended schedule.
Okay, thank you. Brings us up to City of Rochester.
All right. Before I get into these, I just want to note, although it's not a UPWP study, I thought I'd just quickly mention the Interloop North Transformation Planning Study, which again is not UPWP funded, but it is a pretty important transportation planning effort. We are getting ready to, we finalized our public meeting schedule for the final round of public engagement for that effort. Meetings will be held December 2nd, 6th, and 7th. And notifications will be going out today and tomorrow, where we'll be discussing the preferred concept for the future of the Interloop North Corridor, as well as the associated community development recommendations and other items. So a great milestone for that. Very, very transformative project. 6816 West Main Street, the draft report is currently under review by the steering committee. Comments are due, I believe, next week, and then hope to finalize that report in December for, I guess it would be January closeout by the planning committee. And 8769, I don't know.
Do you want me to talk about that?
Sure.
All right. Well, before I move into that one, I just want to, Eric, thank you for that update on Interloop. We'll capture it in a minute. Certainly, it is a project of interest to the region, even though it's not UPWP funded. City of Rochester active transportation plan. We had previously identified a preferred consultant, got approval to enter into a contract, but during contract negotiations development, it kind of fell apart, so we were not able to come to terms. On the advice of Rgrta legal counsel, we're going to shift from doing an RFQ to an RFP, and we're going to have to re-advertise that. So that's going to be a little bit delayed.
Okay, that's too bad to hear. Jim, do you say there's more coming on the Interloop?
No, I was just expressing appreciation for him sharing. Even though we don't have it in the framework, it's still of interest to the region, and we'll capture that in the minutes.
Thanks.
Oh, in the minutes. Okay, I thought you said it. I thought I heard in a minute. So I thought you.
Sorry.
I do have a quick question on that, Eric. I'm interested in that. Is there a prevailing thinking on that? I've heard two thoughts about there, either restoring the previous road grid compared to something what you did for the previous Interloop work as a new type of corridor. Is there a primary thought going forward?
Well, actually, is quite similar to what ultimately wound up being done with Interloop East. If you recall, with Interloop East, the highway was filled in, and Union Street, which had been a frontage road, but was a historic alignment, was basically just restored as the primary street through that area, and then the land was created. Likewise, the preferred concept that's being presented is similar in that it's largely restoring the street grid. It's not creating a new boulevard in the path of what's now the Interloop, and it's relying on a kind of rethought Cumberland Street and a rethought Central Avenue as primary streets that would be serve the traffic and serve as sort of the front doors for new development. And Central Avenue, those that know, used to cross the Genesee River, where the Interloop Bridge is now, used to be the Central Avenue Bridge, and so the preferred concept identifies an extension of Central Avenue westward across the river to Plymouth Avenue, and ramps would be maintained in all directions to 490 on that west end, connecting to this new extension of Central Avenue. So But we'll go through all of that. Obviously, we've done some and working with GTC staff and obviously NISDOT and Monroe County and all the other partners that are represented on this call and through our many conversations through GTC have all played a part. And obviously, there's a lot more work to do. This is a concept planning study. But we are hopeful that funding will come through in 2022 to advance us into a formal project scoping and preliminary design process.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it. It's good to know how that's coming along.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, the city and their consultant has done a nice job of recognizing that that corridor from one end to the other has very different character. Starting at the west end at 490 and, being by sort of the entryway into the central business district and the stadium. But you get to the other end and you have the School of Inquiry and residential neighborhood. So the character as you progress eastward changes, and the recommendations have taken that into consideration so that the character of the future road reflects the surroundings, and that's really what we should be trying to do with any major transformative projects is trying to find a way that the transportation system could benefit businesses and residents and visitors to wherever, whichever part of the corridor they're going to.
Great. Okay. Very good. Thanks for all that update. It's very good information. All right. Next up is Rgrta.
Okay, so for scope 8538, we implemented a number of changes last quarter. We continue to review ridership statistics and other data to work towards additional tweaks for the next upcoming run in January. Task 8543, our understanding is that RFP is still under review and is planned to be released in early December. I guess GTC staff may be able to speak to that if that's inaccurate, but that's our understanding.
Yeah, Joe, can you pick up on that before we move on to the next one? Because I know you had conversations with NISDOT.
Well, Jim, that was about 8553. Bob is the lead on. Yeah. I believe what Eric said is correct, though, from my conversations with Bob.
Is Bob on the line? Okay, yeah. So with procurements using the transit funds, we have to have intermediate review by NISDOT main office at certain milestones. So I'd have to double check, but I believe they've given the thumbs up to advertise that. And that is something we can clarify and make sure is reflected appropriately in the minutes. But I believe we do have the go ahead on that one.
Okay. And then finally, task 80. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
No. I was just clarifying. That was the 8543, right? Jim,
the village and city local routes. Yep.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then task 8553, our en route charging feasibility study, that was awarded by our board in the November board meeting. I think we're just waiting for the contract execution at this point.
Yeah, and that's the one that Joe has had to have some conversations with NISDOT. Again, those milestones where they have to approve. So we're at the point where a preferred consultant has been identified. Rgrta is given authorization to enter into a contract. We just need NISDOT's blessing that they agree that all the steps that were taken were consistent and compliant with FTA procurement rules, and making sure the documentation is all there before they say, yes, you're permitted to sign the contract. And Joe did have a conversation. Joe, was it Tuesday? I think you talked to Corey McAllister, and
yes,
we're pulling the information together that they need and expect, imminent approval by them to allow Rgrta to sign that contract. Or to allow Bill Carpenter to sign that contract.
All right. Very good. Any questions on the RGRTA projects? All right. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. Wayne County is set for now. That brings us up to other agencies.
Okay, starting with the Village of Waterloo, circulation, accessibility, parking. The consultant finalized that draft report and provided them to the steering committee for review and comment, and the project's nearing completion. If you read the screen, you're going to hear what I'm telling you, but if you're looking at the meeting package, it has last month's items. Village of Perry moving along as well. The consultants prepared those recommendations. They are being presented to the steering committee both yesterday and today. Really what it came down to is one evening session, one daytime session to accommodate scheduling conflicts, and a public meeting is scheduled on December 8th. With regard to Victor Street connectivity, consultant has completed the inventory and distributed the report to the steering committee for review and comment. The steering committee did meet earlier this week on Tuesday to discuss that inventory. Bay Industrial Park, the consultant prepared the recommendations and they've been shared with the steering committee for review and comment. And the steering committee met Monday to discuss those recommendations. So we've had a good set of progress on several projects. Wes Webster Hamlet, you may recall this was a project that was added after the UPWP was adopted when we realized we had some additional savings that allowed us to reach a little further. The RFP was released on November 1st after staff worked with the town to develop it, and responses are due by December 6th. The Canandaigua Waterfront Project was presented for closeout at the last minute meeting and recommended for approval. And our list of completed projects is growing and growing. So it's nice that we're chipping away.
Right. That's good. Progress. Okay. Any questions of any of those projects that Jim just ran through for us? Okay, great. Thank you for all the updates, everyone. Bring us up to our next agenda item of TIP staff modifications.
There were since the last planning committee meeting, there have been 2 projects that have been modified with these relatively minor amendments. These were unanimously consented to by the TDC.
Great. Okay, thank you, Alex. Next up, federal legislative and funding update. A lot of news here, right?
Well, I don't know. Big news. I don't know if it's a lot of news, but yeah, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IIJA, was signed into law on Monday. I previously provided highlights at the August meeting and a couple others, so I'm not really going to get into that. What the House passed was what the Senate had passed, and therefore did not require conference committee or anything. But what I will talk about, there's several new programs in the law, and they're going to require they have to be established through the federal rulemaking process. So it's going to be some time before we can take advantage of the entirely new programs. However, there's many existing programs that are receiving higher funding. With those programs, NISDOT needs to get the final appropriations figures from the feds. And so once they have notice on that, they can then work through the calculations. The new law juggles a bit on the percentages that have to be dedicated to geographic areas or to certain programs. So NISDOT needs to take the top line number and work through all their necessary calculations before they can release the planning targets to each region that will work through the TIP. So we're waiting on that, waiting on what the set asides are going to be, and waiting on the planning targets. But with regard to the TIP, the next TIP, the TIP Development Committee met on Tuesday to discuss adjustments to the next solicitation and evaluation process. And really the intent behind this was process improvement. We're always looking for how can we do better next time. GTC and NISDOT Region 4 staffs are going to use the feedback from the meeting and any follow-up to the meeting to finalize the project solicitation that we're expecting to release on December 1st. The applications are going to be due at the end of January, so we're hoping in the interim we get a clearer picture on the funding amounts we'll have available and any special eligibility criteria that need to factor in. So once we are in the mode of evaluating projects and then programming, slotting them into the different fund sources, we'll have a much better handle on what is available. Outside of the capital and implementation side of things, the law is also going to have an impact on our planning activities. Beginning with our next UPWP, our annual work program, GTC is going to be required to spend at least 2.5% of our federal highway metropolitan planning funds on complete streets activities. So we're still working to determine what form this will take, whether it's going to be staff activity, professional services, some combination. What is this going to look like? We haven't yet figured out, but regardless, we will have a standalone task within the UPWP starting next year that it's a dedicated activity for complete streets and gives it more prominent visibility. In nearly 30 years working at MPOs, this is, I think, I can't recall any other time where we've been told we had to spend a certain percent on a particular activity within the planning funds. So this is definitely a priority for the administration and the federal government. So, but we've also at GTC have taken an interest in complete streets for a really long time. So I don't think we're going to there's not going to be a big learning curve or anything for us. It's just going to be a matter of, like I said, some prominent visibility, maybe some stepped up activities, maybe some technical assistance. We're just not sure what form that's going to take yet. But that is a requirement that came out in the law. But we also have another a new opportunity related to resiliency. So the law establishes the PROTECT program, and I'm not going to go through what that acronym means. I've mentioned it in the past, but really it's about implementing resiliency related projects. But within the law, they say if an MPO develops a resiliency plan and prioritizes improvements, the federal share of those projects will rise from 80% to 87%. Which is a benefit to our project sponsors. And then if we incorporate that resiliency plan into our long range plan, the federal share will increase to 90%. But like we've done with the performance measures, we can incorporate by reference so the resiliency plan can have updates and tweaks without us reopening the long range plan. And by that simple action, we can adopt the resiliency plan and in the same meeting incorporate the resiliency plan into our long range plan, and now that's another 3%. And if you got $1 million resiliency project, that's another $30,000 that doesn't have to come out of local coffers. So that's a benefit. But I've mentioned in the past we have conducted vulnerability assessments for our region. A few years ago, we looked at all the critical transportation infrastructure and then followed it up with the remaining locally owned bridges. And when those assessments were done, I'll give credit to Joe Vivenzi. One of the things that he brought to our attention, and we were able to work within the a framework that USDOT developed through some pilot programs and with FEMA. So we utilize that framework. So these assessments can serve as an excellent foundation for the resiliency plan. And once we get the guidance that says what the resiliency plan has to have and how to make it compliant, we think we can create a new, a fully compliant resiliency plan in a much shorter timeline than anybody starting from scratch. And then once it's adopted, project sponsors will be able to develop or will be able to benefit from that larger federal share. So, we think it's going to be a really good use of our planning funds to make that happen. And I'm also thinking that if we hit the ground running with an assessment that's pretty far along, we should be able to get a compliant resiliency plan adopted and in front of US DOT relatively early, so maybe that puts us near the front of the line for funding. You know, funding's coming out on an annual basis, and you know there aren't many places across the country that are ready to go. You know, those early years might benefit us. We're going to continue to review the legislation. I've got a 1,300 plus page bill, but what's, you know, any of you who've looked at legislation, especially when it's reauthorizing a program, it's not here's the legislation, it's insert this, delete that, add this section. So that 1,300 pages, when it all gets codified, is probably going to be at least 2,500 pages. And the IIJA has transportation, other types of infrastructure. So it's not not all 1,300 pages are related to transportation. I've gotten through Division A, which is sort of like the existing reauthorization, and now I'm in Division B, that's sort of a new authorization, and it's interesting. They're very similar names, but one reauthorizes the surface transportation and one increases the surface transportation. So I will try to answer any questions you might have, but I think, you know, the big takeaway is a significant commitment to infrastructure by the federal government, and you know, we have a lot of folks around the table that are committed to benefiting the region. So I think with the level of cooperation and collaboration we have here, I'm hoping it serves us well for any of these funding opportunities, especially the discretionary ones.
Okay, thank you, Jim. And of course, the rulemaking sessions will clarify a lot of this. They'll add another 1,000 pages, I'm sure.
Yeah, and comment period and responses to the comments, and you know, so some of these new programs, it could be, you know, 18 months before money starts flowing on them. We'll have to see.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Any questions for Jim? Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, other GTC matters.
Meeting calendar. So we
yes
have included in the package dates for the 2022 meetings. There was a couple locations where our traditional venue is not available, and you know, there's a scheduling conflict, but then other venues we might have used as secondary locations, you know, due to COVID and agencies having to repurpose space. We haven't locked down, so the ones you see TBD for planning committee, we still want to have it in the you know, communities we've traditionally had it. For example, City of Rochester, I think it was either April or May, but we have not been able to secure a venue on that date. And then, of course, who knows what COVID's going to be doing? We're already having an upsurge, and winter's just starting. So we're going to be mindful of that. We've already identified that the January meeting will be remote. And part of that is because the current open meetings law allowance for remote meetings is in effect through mid-January. I think it's January 15th. So rather than push it now and, you know, make arrangements, we just, you know, we'll do it remotely. The board meetings in August, we did used our Rgrta facility for the first time, and we're using it again on December 9th. And you know, the feedback so far has been positive. The ability to host the meetings and have space for everybody, and the equipment's already in place for supporting the hybrid meetings like we're doing today. Or I should say, not like we're doing today, but to have a remote participation via hybrid meeting. So if we can make it work, I think that's going to be our first choice for the 2022 meetings, but we've not worked on the logistics of that. And again, that's done in coordination with the Regional Planning Council to make sure we're meeting back to back, because there's so much overlap in our membership.
Okay, so We're getting there, but more to come. And
Yeah, I
finalizing.
mean, you can put the dates on your calendar. The location is the only thing that might change.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Jim. Any questions for Jim? All right. Brings us to public engagement highlights. Any? There we go.
Good morning. Just this quarter, we do want to mention, we do have a couple of meetings coming up. We're really trying to track all of the public engagement opportunities from us, but also all of our member agencies, whether it's a project related, funded by the TIP or UPWP. We really want to provide an opportunity for all the projects to be out there, so that all the people, no matter, they don't care who's administering the project, but so we're really trying to cross promote those. And of course, I'm keeping a running list. So, continue to send details my way so that I can help cross promote them, and also, so I can add it to our running list and we can evaluate. But our next one coming up looks like the city. Eric, you have one coming up for milling and resurfacing at the end of November, and Village of Perry, our UPWP project, round number 2 will be in early December.
And we just heard about Interloop a little earlier, so
Yes.
we'll add something. But anytime we have an opportunity to amplify your message about input opportunities, you share that with Lori, and we will put it on our social media channels and try to help spread the word.
Right. Okay. Very good. Thanks, Lori, for that overview. All right. We're up to member agency and other partner updates. Any other agencies have anything to report? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to new business.
There's nothing from GTC.
Any new business from any other of our member agencies? Okay, hearing nothing. That brings us up to our second last item, public forum. Is there anyone from the public who any comments or questions as a result of our meeting today?
No, Scott, there were no questions or comments, but I did want to share that we have about 23 people that have logged on to the public input page to observe and listen in on the project. So thank you all to those that are listening in. And over the course of the meeting, we had about 45 people pop on to check it out. So it's always nice to just be reassured that people do have an interest in transportation planning and these conversations, and that they are listening. So thanks everybody.
Oh, great. Thanks, Laura. That is good news.
I'd just like to say to our audience on publicinput.com, thank you for joining us. And if you put your name in the chat, if you haven't done already, we can capture for our official attendance. It's optional, but always nice to have the public joining us.
Okay. So if there is no other items to come before us today, I could entertain an adjournment. Our next meeting would be January 6th, as Jim talked earlier. It would be remote. The screen you see all materials should be submitted to GTC for consideration at that meeting no later than Thursday, December 23rd. If there's no other thing, I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving next week and a happy holidays in the upcoming holiday season.
Thank you, Scott. You too.
You too, Scott.
Okay.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks everyone. Stay safe.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Stay safe and healthy.
Bye. Thank you.